Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Matt Berner here, taking a look at the Grade 2 Palos Verdes Stakes for Saturday's DRFBets race of the day. Before we get to the Palos Verdes analysis, I want to remind everybody of a new promotion DRF has. It's a contest, actually. Cast your fan vote for Horse of the Year in DRF's Eclipse Awards Fan Vote Sweepstakes, presented by Woodbine. Vote and be entered to win a trip to the Queen's Plate at Woodbine this June. Visit drf.com/eclipse today. Now let's take a look at the field for the Grade 2 Palos Verdes, featuring two-time Breeders' Cup Sprint champion Roy H. You can download free formulator past performances for this race on the Race of the Day event page at drf.com, and we'll handicap in post position order. Begin with a real honest hard knocker. The number one, Touched by Autism, is 20-1 on the morning line. I can understand anyone that thinks he might be a little bit overmatched, but he is a really honest campaigner. And I guess if this pace falls apart, maybe he can get a piece. I think he's slightly better on the synth at Golden Gate.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think a piece is probably his ceiling in here. If the pace does heat up, he can come with that late run. Second off the bench, I thought he ran fair enough in that most recent start off of a little bit of a layoff up at Golden Gate. I don't think he's fast enough to win this race, but like you say, if they hit hard early, he can come and get a little slice, I think.
Two, Distinctive B, one of three in here, trained by Peter Miller. Distinctive B ran the race of his life in the Santa Anita Sprint Championship in the fall, and all that got him was 2 and 3 lengths behind Roy H. It's going to be tough, I think, for Distinctive B to beat Roy H if Roy H brings his best to the table, but he's another honest horse that Peter Miller's turned around.
Yeah, certainly. I've always liked this horse. I maintain I think he's better at a slightly lesser sort of level as opposed to this graded stakes type. Yeah, I also have to factor in his speed. I think there's a part of me that wonders if he is just there to ensure that the pace is honest and it helps set things up for Roy H. There's common ownership there.
One of the keys in this race is whether Kanthaka can make the step that a lot of analysts have been waiting for ever since he kind of exploded on the scene last year in the 7-furlong San Vicente Stakes. We've seen Roy H's best race. It's possible we have yet to see Kanthaka, a newly turned 4-year-old. It's possible we've yet to see his best race. Here's a Jerry Hollendorf formulator fact. We've talked about it on DRFTV all the time. He seems to excel in these dirt sprints, second off the layoff in graded stakes at Santa Anita, 33% positive ROI. If the pace is fast, this horse could come running late. Are you worried about the 6?
Yeah, 100%. I think he wants more distance. I think he's 7/8, one-turn mile type. I also don't like the prospect of him closing so much ground at 6 furlongs at Santa Anita. That's usually a distance that is conducive to speed holding. I think he's going to have too much work cut out for him. He's the kind of horse, to me, I'm against him in here. I'd use him underneath, but I think longer and probably at a different track would be ideal for him.
St. Joe Bay won this race in 2017. That race didn't feature a horse the caliber of Roy H. He was trained by Peter Miller with St. Joe Bay back then. John Sadler's done a real nice job after taking this horse for 62.5 in May. I liked his performance last out. I know it was only a 5-furlong race at Los Al. That was a very live race, and it showed this old boy still has some spark.
I was going to say, I mean, you see some of the horses in there. Distinctive B was no match for him. You see Richard's Boy. I know he's predominantly a turf horse, but he's quality. St. Joe Bay, I think the thing that was most intriguing to me about that Los Al race was him sort of re-displaying that ability to sit off of a target and still be effective. Whereas I thought when he was at his best, and I still do wonder if this is the case, his absolute best game is going to the lead. I don't know that he's fast enough to make it in here with all the other Peter Miller speed signed on, but I do think there's a scenario where if he sits off and perhaps Roy H isn't ready to go, because keep in mind, this is not the goal for Roy H. Maybe St. Joe Bay can take advantage.
You mentioned that Peter Miller might have entered Distinctive B in as a pace setter for Roy H. Perhaps that's also the case with Conquest Tsunami, who's basically a downhill turf specialist that's going to try the dirt here. We know he has a ton of early speed. Timeform US believes that he'll be the horse likely to make the pace in the Palos Verdes. As we take a look at the pace projector, they've got Conquest Tsunami out there on the lead. He's very good on turf. I'm not sure if that turf speed completely translates to 7 on the dirt.
No, I agree with that. I think he's going to be having to run faster than he has to date anyway, as far as his turf runs are concerned. And I know early in his career, they ran him on dirt. And I believe he won a stakes race on dirt, a 1-turn mile at Churchill Downs. But that was many, many moons ago. That was in 2014. He hasn't done this in quite some time. I appreciate that they're taking a chance with him here and just seeing if he can still do it, because, you know, you're kind of limited as far as the turf sprints are concerned for this time of year. Take a shot, see if it works. If it doesn't, you always know you can go back to the grass.
Man, I think Awesome Anywhere is a sleeper in here. 2 starts back at Santa Anita going 6.5. I know it may not have been the greatest field in the world, but he ran a 100 buyer speed figure, 123 pace adjusted time form US rating in completing the hat trick. It was his 3rd in a row. Last time out over the synthetic surface, I think he had to go a lot faster in the early portion of that race than he wanted to go. I don't believe he's a need the lead type. It's possible he could sit off a Conquest Tsunami and get the jump on Roy H turning into the stretch.
I think the interesting thing here, if you like this horse, or the way that I looked at him anyway, was do you think he can replicate that run 2 starts back? Because that's the only race on his page that right now is good enough to win. If you think he can do that, then he's very interesting at a square price for Hollendorfer and Smith. If you think he is more of the horse that you've seen for the rest of his career, then I think a minor reward is probably his ceiling. He does love Santa Anita, though.
Let's take a look at our top picks for the Palos Verdes. The 7 Roy H, 4-5 on the morning line. I expect him to go off shorter than that based on his 2 wins in the Breeders' Cup Sprint and last year's Palos Verdes victory. And that Palos Verdes race, it was a race in which he won that race under hands and heels urging from Kent DeZormo. I loved his Breeders' Cup Sprint. I know he got a great trip just hanging outside, but when he was asked the question by Paco Lopez, he coasted to the lead. I don't know. I think he's going to get a similar situation here, stalking in the clear.
I mean, he's very clearly the best horse in the race. He has a number of triple-digit buyers. I believe he has 8 to his name or 7 to his name. Like you say, back-to-back Breeders' Cup Sprint winner. He's going to win another Eclipse Award this year. I just kind of look at it and say he's probably going to win. I agree with you. He's going to be shorter than 4-5. He goes off in the 1-5 range if I'm being honest. But if you're going to take a shot against him, I think this is the time to do it because the goal is to get him to go to Dubai and run well over there in the Golden Shaheen. You know what? He's probably still just better than everyone else in this race. I'll take a slight stab against him.
St. Joe Bay is going to be your top selection. Where do you think he's going to be when at the half-mile pole or so entering the turn? Where does he need to be to upset Roy H?
Well, I think that's the most difficult thing about this race. With the other speed in there, I don't think he's going to be able to coast out there, and I don't even know if he's fast enough to make the front. The problem is that probably puts him in a very similar position to where Roy H will be. And again, it really, to me, boils down to, do you think Roy H is ready to go? Or even if he's not ready to go, is 85% of Roy H better than a fully cranked and ready to go St. Joe Bay? Just strictly from a gambling standpoint, I'll take my chances on that 5 or 6 to 1 chance as opposed to the 1 or 2 to 5 chance.
I agree with you that St. Joe Bay will run well. He's my second choice in the race. I'm going 7, 4, 2, and 3. Matt's taking a shot with St. Joe Bay, and if I was riding him, I would just send him. Maybe Conquest Tsunami won't show that turf speed on the dirt, and I think he's a little faster than Distinctive B. We'll see if Roy H can make it 2 Palos Verdes stakes in a row to go along with his 2 Breeders' Cup Sprints. Before we go, I want to remind you about that nice contest DRF.com is presenting. Cast your fan vote for Horse of the Year in DRF's Eclipse Awards Fan Vote Sweepstakes. It's presented by Woodbine. Vote and be entered to win a trip to the Queen's Plate at Woodbine this June. Visit DRF.com/Eclipse today. An approximate post time for the Palos Verdes, 4:04 Pacific. Best of luck.